The next thing we'd like to talk about is the Royal Proclamation of October 1763. And one of the common questions that we get about Aboriginal people, well, maybe more about Aboriginal issues. And it's a common question that it deals with the post-contact relationship of Aboriginal peoples and people from other nations. And it's this whole idea of conquering. When I first started off delivering these presentations, people would often ask me a question about Aboriginal rights and Aboriginal title, and they'd say, hey, how is it that this group of people that we've conquered can have any rights other than the rights we give them? Because after all, didn't we conquer them? So we went back and took a look into Canadian history to see how much conquering went on. And what we found was that by October of 1763, that the process of building relations with Aboriginal people had become a very formal process. And in the proclamation, which has a whole number of different segments to it, the one particular paragraph that we like to focus on is this paragraph that refers to them as nations or tribes. It states that it is just and reasonable and essential to our interests that the several nations or tribes of Indians with whom we are connected and live under our protection should not be molested or disturbed in the possession of such parts of our dominions and territories as not having been ceded to or purchased by us or reserved to them or any of them as their hunting grounds. So that's a very important piece of the relationship between Canada and her Aboriginal peoples, because in the paragraph there's a number of things happening. The first thing that's happening is that King George III and his proclamation are recognizing those Aboriginal peoples, as we call them today, as nations or tribes. So since the very earliest times of the country, Aboriginal peoples are used to working with colonial and then later federal and provincial governments on a nation-to-nation basis. There's no imbalance of power there. It's on a nation-to-nation basis. And it's something that we see happening even today. If we look at the British Columbia Treaty process and other processes, we see that those kinds of things are happening on a nation-to-nation basis, those treaty negotiations. And again, that's really what the Royal Proclamation represents, is the start of the treaty process. It recognizes them as nations. It also recognizes them as owning the lands that they're using and occupying. So another important feature said that it needed to be ceded to or purchased by us. And so a very important piece of the puzzle, as it recognizes the Aboriginal peoples as nations, and it recognizes them as owning the lands that they live on. So there's this requirement for King George's colonial governments operating in what would become Canada, this requirement to purchase land from them. The third thing it does is it sets out what are often called special fishing and hunting provisions, are reserved to them and or any of them as their hunting grounds, is what it says in the proclamation. And so it's also setting out those provisions to fish and hunt. And today, that would be sort of an older treaty. Today, the modern treaties would not only deal with things like fishing and hunting, but it would deal with governance and healthcare and education and whatever agreements that federal and or provincial governments or even territorial governments will come up with with respect to Aboriginal peoples. But again, a very important document recognizing Aboriginal peoples as nations or tribes, recognizing them as owning the lands that they live and operate on, and recognizing them as having what are often called special fishing